actually did a patch on Social Security, and it made it solvent for a longer period of time. The problem with Social Security is that when it was initially begun, there were 16 people paying in, and only one person taking out. Today, there are 3 people working for one, and we're quickly going to go to 2. So the long-term projections are challenging. So there are things we can do, and we have to look at all of the options. We have to look at every aspect of the investment of these funds, the raising of revenues. Dr. Palmer, who's a former member of the Maxwell School on the Social Security Trust Fund Board, has been a very thoughtful leader and has given me good advice on the way we should proceed. But it is not in crisis. It is secure, and we have time. But we can't dally. We have to have the debate.
Well, let's try once again here on these financial, fiscal questions. See if we can get a little more specific. There's a wide, bipartisan expert agreement with the following statement by the independent U.S. Comptroller General, David Walker. Walker says, continuing on the unsustainable path of budget deficits will gradually erode, if not suddenly damage, our economy, our standard of living, and ultimately our national security. Do you agree with Mr. Walker? And where do you stand on the reinstatement of caps on annual appropriations and pay-as-you-go rules for taxes and entitlement spending as a means of imposing much-needed fiscal discipline on the appetites of both parties, as well as on the appetites of we the people?
I'm first.
Yes, sir, you are.
I think Mr. Walker has been very clear in his views on deficits. We have deficits. We have always had deficits. And we need to control them. We actually, after my party became the majority party back in the mid-90s, we dramatically slowed discretionary spending, and at the time of rising tax revenues, we actually paid back $500 billion on the debt, reduced our debt by $500 billion. September 11th, 2001 came, it changed everything. We had a recession, we went to war, and we create a new Homeland Security Department, and revenues went up, spending went up dramatically. We have since begun to slow that down. At the same time, we have passed tax cuts that have stoked the economy. In the last 3 years, we've grown 6.6 million jobs. We've dramatically grown our economy. Unemployment is down, revenues are up, and we've cut our deficits by about 50% just in 3 years. Now, back during World War II, we had 70% of our gross domestic product was deficit. Today, it's in the neighborhood of small single-digit percents. We can live with that if we can keep it there, but we do have to control discretionary spending, and we have. The last 2 years, we've controlled our spending, discretionary spending, to the point where it's only growing 1% per year, outside of national defense and homeland security. And the deficits are going down. We need to get to a point where we are, again, reducing our debt. But if we were to elect a Democratic Congress, spending will go through the roof and taxes will go up. The debate will shift from how much can we cut your taxes to how much can we raise them.
Can I just have a quick follow-up, and I'll have one with you too. Do you support the reinstatement of the caps and pay-as-you-go?
I do not. I think they're artificial. I think Congress needs to exercise its powers under its discretionary charter.
Mr. Maffei.
Well, I agree with Mr. Walker's statement, and I do think that we are in big trouble because of the burgeoning national debt, which has doubled under the Bush administration. In fact, and it's not just a problem because of the debt itself, although that is a huge problem, but who's buying the debt. It's now increasingly China and some of the countries in the Middle East. Iran is even in the top 10 for who's buying our debt. How can we stand up and defend this country when there are bankers when our possible adversaries are our bankers. It is interesting that Mr. Walsh takes credit for the surpluses in the 90s. I believe Mr. Clinton and the Secretary of the Treasury, Robert Rubin, had a lot to do with those as well, particularly because under the last 6 years under Bush, we've doubled the national debt. I do believe in that we should do pay-go rules and probably spending caps as well, but certainly the pay-go rules. If you can't come up with the money, then look for something else. And it doesn't surprise me that Congressman Walsh is against that. I mean, he's benefited greatly from the rules the way they are, the kinds of systems the way they are. He even made sure that there was a $4.5 million appropriation, not for Syracuse University, but for St. Bonaventure University, his alma mater, which happens not to be in the district. There's a lot of pork in the budget, and some of it is, it's in the eye of the beholder, whether it's good or bad. A case can be made for any of that kind of spending. But overall, I don't feel that it's efficient to have a system where we actually reward people for, trying to find more and more and more spending projects, whether or not they actually have the results that are intended.
So if I understood you correctly, you're for the pay-as-you-go rules, but you don't have a position on the spending caps.
I want to look at them a little closer. I think that they're important to cap spending, but I'm not sure if I would go so far as to cap them at a certain level. But I am for the pay-as-you-go rules, yes.
Thank you, gentlemen. I have a two-part question prompted by a number of viewer responses that we received. These questions were similar in content, so we decided to ask them tonight. Mr. Walsh, to you. Viewers speak highly of your hard work and dedication on behalf of your district, and they say they are grateful. That dedication would normally be enough to assure you a victory in November. But for those who object to the way that Iraq is being conducted by our president, what else can they do but vote against you if they want to send a strong message to the president? Conversely, Mr. Maffei, knowing that voters appreciate the attention that your opponent has paid to their local interest and their needs and the skill in which he has delivered that, and knowing that they are considering you as a junior first-term member of Congress, without seniority, without clout, how will you deliver for the district? You go first.
Thank you, Donna. I believe that the first thing that's important to remember is we haven't had a lot to compare Mr. Walsh to. And so, while he brings home the bacon, that's the reputation. All members of Congress, in fact, bring money back to their districts, and all members of Congress do good constituent work. And, he and his staff should be proud. They've done good constituent work in the past. But that's not what all a congressman does. A true measure of a congressman's effectiveness is how he represents his constituents' views and interests, not President Bush's views and interests. The congressman supports President Bush 9 out of 10 times, actually more than 9 out of 10 times. And so he has supported him on this war in Iraq and a lot of other issues as well, such as the veto of expanded stem cell research. He now denies it, but he wrote in a 2004 questionnaire that he would check to allow workers to invest a portion of their payroll tax in private accounts which they manage themselves, which parallels pretty well with President Bush's privatization plan. So what you're saying is that what is the calculation that voters should do? I think that even if Mr. Walsh could continue to bring back what he has brought back, it's beginning to become too high a price. Too high a price to see men and women go off to Iraq, where even he doesn't seem sure that we're doing the right thing any longer. Just too high a price. However, I do dispute that he would be able to do the same. I think he's done a lot in the past, but I think the future is going to be different. The system is going to be changing. We are almost assured that the Democrats are going to take the majority back. His seniority won't mean that much in a Democratic majority. However, as he points out, I have Washington contacts. He's made it one of the center attacks on me in my campaign. Those Washington contacts are going to do a lot of good for this area as we get into a new Democratic Congress. And I am certainly ready to fight as hard as I can to bring back every share of what Central New York deserves.
Thank you, Mr. Maffei. Mr. Walsh, your response.
Thank you, Donna. It's not just about the money. It's about our quality of life. And it's about passing legislation. It's about being able to reach across the aisle in a nonpartisan way to accomplish things. I've passed legislation with Democratic help to designate the Erie Canal as a National Heritage Corridor, which will reinvigorate many of these towns across